Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Sonic Character Chaos DX, the show where we don't need Sonic's help. So, what's up with this little guy? Miles Tails Prower is the Sonic franchise's very own Luigi, introduced in Sonic 2 to give Sonic a trusted ally and best friend he can count on. Tails has proven himself to have a strong following of fans among the community because of, well, of course, we all love an underdog story, and also just look at this cute little furball. So today, we will be looking through the history of Tails, the highs, lows, twos, and fro's. Introduced in 1992's Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Tails became the first of many additions to Sonic's at the time pretty small roster. His backstory was also plainly simple. Miles Prower was born on Westside Island with the unique property of having two tails, something he'd spent his childhood days being bullied for, until one day Sonic would pass by and save Miles from these said bullies. Miles would then follow the Blue Hedgehog, using his two tails as a propeller to keep up with the Hedgehog's speed. Sonic would give this new friend the nickname Tails, and the rest is history. Sonic 2 as a game is pretty light on story from here out, so there isn't too much to talk about after this, but I'd be remiss not to talk about how much I love this game's ending. Tails, unable to follow Sonic onto the Death Egg, watches the Death Egg explode in the sky, and immediately goes to hop into the tornado to go save his friend. It's something I've always loved about Sonic 2's narrative, despite how it's probably the most light on narrative elements of the classics. You can really feel the friendship between these two characters in this scene. It's really great. And sure enough, Tails would prove himself a mainstay character in the classic era, returning as a playable character in Sonic 3, and even getting two games of his own. One of which you can even commit actual war crimes in. Oh, Tails, you. But sure enough, eventually, the jump to 3D would come for us, and it doesn't take long in Sonic Adventure for Tails to, crash in. Complete with his own campaign where he goes through his own little character arc about learning to do things on his own without Sonic's help. The gameplay also reinforces this by having the gimmick of Tails' gameplay being that he has to race Sonic to the finish, the game encouraging you to utilize what unique abilities Tails has to win. Granted, Tails' levels in Sonic Adventure 1 are piss easy, but that's neither here nor there. Tails' story in Adventure 1 ends with him getting separated from Sonic while Eggman launches a plan to just fucking bomb Station Square. Holy shit, Eggman. But the missile malfunctions and doesn't detonate, and Tails must make a mad dash for the missile to properly disarm it before Eggman gets there. Once he does that, Tails is attacked by Eggman, piloting his Egg Walker, and has to step up to face him head-on by himself. And sure enough, he succeeds, becoming a hero in his own right. This is a cute little arc for the character that is basically Sonic's little brother by this point, and I quite enjoy it, and it's very easy to see why people resonated with it so much. It's seeing the little brother, the little guy, the underdog, the player 2 standing up for themselves, which we really like. For example, it's a big part of why Luigi is such a popular character in the Mario fandom. And sure enough, Tails would carry this momentum into Adventure 2, by teaming up with Amy to help bust Sonic out of prison, piloting a fucking mech. Yeah, that's right, Tails is a new type now. Admittedly, he doesn't really have much of an arc, quote-unquote, in this game as far as I can tell, but he proves that he is learning to stand on his own 2 feet in this game, and that's pretty cool. Even taking a stand against Eggman when, as far as he knows, Sonic just died in front of his eyes and it was all his fault. I mean, neither of those things are true, but Tails doesn't know that. Honestly, it's some incredible stuff, and it's only slightly detracted from by the fact that I hate every single one of Tails' levels in Sonic Adventure 2. But once we start getting to the further 2000s games, Tails kinda stops making the same motions. Like, don't get me wrong, he's an important part of the team in Sonic Heroes. In 06, he'd lend a hand to Sonic every now and then in the levels, and in Shadow 05, you can find him on his own solo missions that you can lend a hand to sometimes, and like, that's all fine, I guess, but it doesn't really leave me with a lot to talk about. Like, Tails during this era of Sonic is kinda just competent, not much else. But as has been greatly documented in the fandom by this point, eventually, it felt like Tails' ability to fight on his own was something that kinda slid away over time, and it, of course, became most notable in Unleashed. Yeah, we'll get to that other one in a bit, don't worry. Our first run-in with Tails in Unleashed is him fleeing from a bunch of Gaia monsters, not even really attempting to fight back, which is, interesting. Now, I'm not gonna go on some big angry rant about how this moment in Unleashed ruined Tails forever or something, because I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, but it does stand out as a pretty weird moment of fear in the face of pretty basic enemies from a post-adventure Tails. But if nothing else in this game, and by extension the 2010s games that would come, Tails still proved himself useful as Sonic's right-hand brainiac and gadget guy, being crucial to the success of the mission in Sonic Colors with his translator, but people really wanted to see Tails out there and kicking ass again. And well, he shot Zavok in Lost World, I guess. I guess Tails in the Boom timeline was pretty competent as a fighter, pilot, and inventor alike, but Boom's more situation comedy focus meant there wasn't really anything major done with it narratively. I actually quite like Boom Tales for the record, but that's just how it is. But then of course, as we know, Forces happened and
Whoa! Chaos! Sonic, help me!
oh boy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, fans were not happy with what they did to Tails here, the infamous example being the scene of him cowering in front of Chaos Zero. And you know what? You've heard 1,000,001 times by now why this scene sucks, so I'm actually going to do the unthinkable. I'm gonna defend it. No, I'm serious. So to start, let's talk about the greater context surrounding this scene. Sonic Forces is a game where Eggman has all but won and Sonic is presumed dead. This isn't the first time we've seen Tails under the presumption Sonic has died, granted, we've seen this in Sonic Adventure 2, but the difference between that time and this time is that in Sonic Adventure 2, Tails had just witnessed it, and was definitely still running on adrenaline, while over in Forces, it's been 6 months since it happened, and shit only seemed to get worse in that time. I don't think it's that hard to assume that Tails would relapse in that time. Sonic was basically his older brother by this point after all. Hell, even everyone in the Resistance who is fighting still looks clearly shook by Sonic's defeat in this story. Another way to look at it is if you're familiar at all with the stages of grief, you know, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, Adventure 2 Tails was in the denial and anger phase, while Forces Tails has moved down to the bargaining and depression phase. And to respond to the "he beat Chaos 4, why is he scared of Chaos 0" point that often gets brought up, he didn't beat Chaos 4. Not on his own, anyway. In Sonic Adventure 1, the Chaos 4 fight happens in Sonic, Tails' and Knuckles' stories. I'd assume this implies that the three teamed up on Chaos in canon, which would have given Tails a big leg up. And let's be real, if it really was only one of them that canonically fought it, it was Sonic. Let's be 200% here. So my point is that this specific cutscene from Forces in a vacuum is completely fine, because the context of everything that is happening in the game seems to imply that Tails is at a low point mentally, so of course he's not equipped to deal with Chaos. Now, does this mean I think Forces Tails is good as a whole? Oh, fuck no, not at all. Tails stands there and does nothing when Sonic gets initially attacked by Infinite, and he never really has a moment in the story where he truly gets back on his feet. He kinda just spends the rest of the game following Classic Sonic around until everything just kind of fixes itself around him. I just think this cutscene gets way too much of the vitriol that comes from people discussing how Forces, quote, ruined Tails. And then Frontiers was left to pick up the pieces, and with this awkward-ass place the character was now in, the response from fans to how Frontiers went about handling Tails has been, well, wildly inconsistent. So how Frontiers chooses to handle this matter was having Tails struggling with his self-confidence and talking with Sonic about his successes and failures. Tails laments his failure in Forces, and then Sonic reminds him of his successes in games like Sonic Adventure, and then reassures him that it's great that he wants to help more and be more independent, but that there is no shame in asking for help when it's needed, and that despite everything, he's still just a kid. All this being mirrored by Sonic and Tails helping out a Coco who wishes to prove themselves to another Coco they admire that they are a hero too in their own right. Some fans have chosen to cynically interpret this story as choosing to have Tails' arc in this game be an apology note to the fanbase rather than anything new, or just being a rehash of his arc in Sonic Adventure 1, and to be honest, while I think it's definitely an arc that was born from how Tails has been handled in more recent games, I think they did a pretty good job of making it feel natural for his character. Forces never gave Tails the resolution to his arc that he needed, so of course it makes sense that he'd still be hung up on the situation with Infinite and, well, everything that happened in Forces. I heavily respect the choice for Frontiers to address this instead of cover its ears and pretend it didn't happen. It really helps it feel like Tails is still growing and learning, and he has his ups and downs like everyone does in their life. I have argued to death and back before that character regression doesn't necessarily mean bad writing. In fact, it can be really good writing. And Frontiers was able to salvage Forces' poor handling of character regression and make something of it. Tails went from just, I need to be more independent, to, I need to be more independent, but that doesn't mean I can't ask for help when I'm not sure. And I think that's the exact kind of reason why I like when stories do character regression like this. It's great when a character falling into an old pitfall again allows them to learn something new about themselves. It's not just repeating arcs for repeating arcs' sakes, there's a carefully considered purpose here. Granted, there are some weird things about Tails and Frontiers that I don't get, like there's this very easily missable subplot about some evil Shadow Tails that never really gets explained. Sounds like Tails was going through some Persona 4 type shit. But back to the point, I think taking mistakes or things people didn't like and reworking them to make sense is always going to be one of those things that's just going to be heavily divisive. Some people think it's clever writing, some people think it's wasting time not focusing on something new. Personally, I fall under the former, so sue me. That being said, what Tails does next in this series should absolutely be something new. We've addressed the problem, the path is open for a new adventure, do something new with Tails next time we see him. And that's most of my core thoughts on Game Tails over, so how about we explore how he's handled in other Sonic media for a bit. So, Archie Tails was always kind of in a weird spot during the early days. The whole thing of Tails being a mechanic hadn't been quite established yet, and by the time that was established, Rota Walrus had solidified himself as the gadget guy of the Freedom Fighters, leaving Tails kinda stuck. But I do have to say, the whole chosen hero plotline they had going on with him, for as stupid as it was, I kinda loved just for how absurdly hilarious it is. Come on, Sega! Bring back Titan Tails, you cowards! What about in Sonic X? Yeah, he's pretty good here. He's basically just Adventure Tails, and he also does have his whole Cosmo plotline in Season 3, and that is a genuinely cool story arc for him. And I'll say this, it's definitely a more interesting doomed romance story for Tails than whatever the f*** Archie was doing. Over in the IDW comics, Tails has some cool stuff going on too, such as using the Cyclone to fight against a Zombot horde in the Metal Virus arc, and gearing up with all sorts of crazy gadgets to go save Sonic and Scrapnik Island. I also feel like the IDW comics do a really good job of making Sonic and Tails feel like best friends slash brothers. Their banter here is a lot of fun. And then there's the movies. Admittedly, I think in the movies, Tails fans had been just a little bit starved. In the second movie, I think they have a good balance struck. The first half of the movie is Tails' half, with him and Sonic going to find the Emerald Compass together, and Sonic helping Tails find his confidence. And the second half is Knuckles' half, which, well, this isn't the Knuckles episode, so we can leave that for now. But in movie 3, I felt like Tails was kinda just competent and not much else. Like, I get that this was the Sonic and Shadow movie primarily, and that's fine, but when Knuckles gets to have that really big scene where he confronts Sonic for acting recklessly and in anger, and the most memorable Tails scene in movie 3 is a gag about blowing on game cartridges, yeah, it feels a bit off. The more cynical part of my brain is telling me this is because Tails isn't played by a big-name Hollywood actor like all the other game original characters are, but I really do hope that these movies think of something to do with Tails going forward. Overall, I think that Tails is looking to a bright future in this franchise going forward, granted everything Frontiers promises for the character gets built on. Tails has clearly resonated with fans for a good reason. He's a young kid who has a genuine story of learning and growing and building courage, and that's very easy to get behind. Adventure Tails really feels like a character for all those younger siblings out there, and I do get why people were upset with his depiction in, say, Forces or other games at the time. And I do think it kinda sucks that Forces isn't really able to complete that character arc it sets up with that infamous scene, probably a consequence of the rushed development if I had to guess. And I get why at the time this would have just looked like Sonic Team didn't give a shit about Tails anymore, but Frontiers, regardless of whether you think they did it well or not, shows that they do want to make Tails cool again, and I do see a clear path to something great with this character, granted Sega follows up on it. So to end off, it's lightning round time! I much prefer the Adventure 1 version of Believe in Myself to the Adventure 2 version, if I'm being completely honest. I don't know how to describe it, but I just kinda feel like it flows better. I like that in Tails' levels in Sonic Adventure, Sonic will stop if he gets too far ahead. Sure, all the difficulty goes out the window, but I still think this is a cute way to use ludonarrative to convey the friendship between Sonic and Tails. Colleen O'Shaughnessy is probably my favourite Tails voice to date, but I will say that Tails' hero's voice has like a weird charm to it, I guess. Amy Palin is also a pretty iconic Tails too. Does anyone else find it weird that classic Tails was more orange in color, but as time went on they slowly turned him more and more yellow? Like, it doesn't really matter at all, but like, I always found it kinda weird. I'm not a fan of the fact that Metal Tails from Superstars, as of Crossworlds, is considered canon. I like Metal Tails' design, but I would have preferred if it was kept as a non-canon fun thing. I like the idea that Eggman thinks so lowly of Tails in the classic era that he makes a crappy drone doll instead of a full-fledged combat robot like he does for Sonic or Knuckles. Metal Tails being canon kinda ruins that. I don't like Sonic Prime, but I'll give it that 9 is a very conceptually interesting antagonist. A Tails that became incredibly jaded and isolated without Sonic, and eventually drives himself mad is really cool. I genuinely love that in more recent depictions of the two's dynamic, Sonic and Tails are shown to often have silly banter with each other, like the scene towards the end of Colors with Tails giving Sonic shit for underselling his contributions to the mission, or in Frontiers when Tails hits Sonic with the "I might even become a better hero than you," and Sonic replies with the "Yeah, don't push it." I think a worse faith interpretation may see this as mean-spirited, but I honestly think it really helps these two characters feel like brothers for them to have these types of light-hearted jabs at each other. Anyway, with all that said, we are done and finished with today's episode of Sonic Character Chaos DX. Feel free to do whatever you do when you finish a video essay about Sonic, I guess, and I'll see you next time. Unless you thought my takes on Tails were so abysmally dog shit that you'd never want to see me again, in which case, bye. Have a nice life.